She thought her life was over the day she lost the use of her legs, until a little boy offered her ice cream, and a factory worker opened the door to a family she never knew she needed. But standing in their way is a man with power, money, and no heart, her own father. This isn't just a story about struggle, it's about love, courage, and the impossible choice between dreams and family. Stay until the very end, because sometimes, the ones we fight hardest for, become the reason we finally win. This is not just a story, it's a piece of someone's hidden pain, quietly waiting to be heard. In today's story, we dive into a moment that can change everything, in the most unexpected way. Before we begin, where are you listening from? Canada? The US? Norway? Let us know in the comments, because stories may begin anywhere, but they connect us all. Stay with us until the very end, because sometimes, what breaks your heart can also heal it. And if you believe stories can change lives, hit subscribe. Join our journey. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment. Your voice matters here. Sometimes, life changes in a single moment. A chance encounter. A simple decision to walk across the room. No one could have guessed that an ordinary graduation day at Riverside University would plant the seed of a story filled with love, pain, resilience, and the power of kindness. This is the story of Alexandra Sinclair, a brilliant young woman paralyzed after a tragic accident, abandoned by the one person she longed for most, and Marcus, a single father fighting to raise his son while carrying the scars of grief. Two people from different worlds, bound by loss, destined to collide, but neither of them knew that their lives were about to change forever. The air inside Riverside University's grand auditorium was thick with celebration. The sound of hundreds of voices layered together. Proud parents cheering, friends whistling, siblings shouting names into the vast chamber. Cameras flashed like tiny stars as graduates filed across the stage, their black robes swaying, tassels bouncing with each step. The smell of flowers, cologne, and polished wood mingled with the nervous excitement that clung to every corner of the room. But in the far corner near a tall window that overlooked the campus lawn, one graduate sat apart from it all. Alexandra Sinclair, 22 years old, summa cum laude in business administration, sat still in her wheelchair. The sharp overhead lights reflected against the metal of her chair, a constant reminder of the life-altering accident that had forever divided her past from her present. Her graduation cap was slightly crooked, as though she hadn't cared enough to fix it. Her program, creased and crumpled, rested in her lap where her fingers had crushed it again and again, as though gripping it too tightly might keep her from falling apart. Her long blonde hair spilled over her shoulders like a curtain, shielding her pale face from the room that seemed to erupt with joy around her. But her green eyes, they were empty, unfocused, locked on the window where the sunlight streamed through. The laughter and cheering behind her might as well have been 1,000 miles away. She was here, yet not part of it. A shadow at her own celebration. And the cruelest part, no one seemed to notice. Row after row of families gathered in clusters, hugging, snapping photos, holding bouquets of roses for their graduates. Students posed with friends, tossing caps in the air. Professors beamed at their star pupils. Everywhere there was connection, belonging, pride. Everywhere except here. Alexandra's jaw clenched. She had worked harder than most of her classmates, fought battles every day just to finish her degree. She should have been smiling, radiant, proud. Instead, her hands trembled in her lap as she whispered words no one else could hear. You did it, but no one cares. Her chest tightened. She told herself she wouldn't cry, not here, not in front of them. Not again. Then came a voice, sharp and innocent, cutting through the noise like an arrow. Dad, why is that lady sitting all by herself? The words weren't cruel. They weren't whispered behind cupped hands like she'd grown used to. They were simple, direct, and they stung, not because they were unkind, but because they were true. Alexandra blinked hard, her gaze snapping away from the window. A boy no older than 8 was staring at her with wide, curious eyes. His small hand clutched the rough, callous fingers of his father. The man, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in faded jeans that didn't quite fit the formality of the event, followed his son's pointing finger. His eyes landed on Alexandra. For a long moment, he didn't speak, but something shifted in his expression. His brows furrowed, his lips parted slightly. There was no pity in his gaze, no judgment, just something Alexandra hadn't seen in years. Recognition, as though he knew what it meant to be alone in a crowd. He cleared his throat, answering his son softly, though his voice carried enough for Alexandra to hear. Maybe her family got lost in the crowd, buddy. But Alexandra caught the hesitation. Even from across the room, she could see it in the way his hand lingered on his son's shoulder, the way his eyes didn't leave her. He didn't believe his own words. The boy tugged harder on his father's hand. Can we go say hi? She looks really sad. The man's jaw tightened. His gaze flicked from his son to Alexandra and back. She looked away quickly, heat rushing to her cheeks. The last thing she needed was strangers walking over, pretending to care. But the boy wouldn't relent. His small voice was insistent, pleading, "Please, Dad. Just for a minute." The man exhaled slowly, almost as if surrendering to something bigger than himself. "Okay, but just to say congratulations. If she wants privacy, we respect that." Alexandra's stomach knotted as she realized they were coming closer. She wanted to disappear, to vanish into her chair, to fade into the glass reflection beside her. Strangers always meant polite smiles, empty words, the kind that reminded her just how invisible she really was. But when the boy reached her first, his smile wasn't polite. It was genuine. Pure? "Hey," he chirped Tommy. "And this is my dad. We saw you sitting alone, and we just wanted to say congratulations." The words, so simple, struck her harder than she expected. She blinked at him, startled as if kindness from a stranger was foreign territory. Her lips parted, but no sound came out at first. Finally, she managed a whisper. "Thank you." Her voice was so faint it nearly disappeared under the chatter of the crowd. The man crouched slightly so his eyes met hers. His presence was steady, calm, protective somehow. "I hope we're not intruding. My son has a gift for noticing when people might need a friend." For a flicker of a second, something unfamiliar rose in Alexandra's chest. Cautious hope. She had no idea that this tiny interruption, this small act of compassion, was about to set into motion a chain of events that would unravel every wall she had built around her heart. And neither did Marcus, the weary single father kneeling beside his son. They thought they were just exchanging greetings at a graduation. But fate had already decided otherwise. Because in the shadows of that crowded auditorium, the loneliest graduate and the tired factory worker had just stepped into the first page of a story that would bind their lives together forever. The boy's words still echoed in Alexandra's ears. "Congratulations." He said it as if he truly meant it, not as if it was something polite he was supposed to say. His big brown eyes shone with sincerity, his untamed hair sticking up in every direction like a boy too curious about the world to stop for comms. For a long moment, Alexandra simply stared at him. She didn't know how to react. In her world, people didn't just come up to her anymore. They skirted around her chair, offered sympathetic nods from a distance, or worse, avoided eye contact altogether. And now here was this little boy, grinning at her like she wasn't broken, like she wasn't an empty chair parked in the corner of life. Her lips moved before her heart gave her permission. "Thank you." It came out like a fragile thread, soft enough to disappear in the noise of the auditorium. But the boy beamed as though she had given him a gift. The man beside him, his father clearly, crouched down slightly, leveling his gaze with hers. He wasn't close enough to invade her space, but not so far that it felt like a dismissal. His presence was steady, grounded. "I hope we're not intruding," he said gently. His voice was deep but calm, the kind of tone people use to soothe a frightened animal. "My son has a gift for noticing when people might need a friend." Something inside Alexandra shifted. Her chest tightened, not from pain this time, but from something unfamiliar. Surprise. When had anyone last noticed her? Really seen her? She wanted to look away, to hide behind her hair again, but Tommy tilted his head with childlike curiosity, utterly fearless. "My dad says graduation is super important. Are you smart? You must be really smart to graduate from this big school." "Tommy," the man murmured with a warning edge, but instead of bristling, Alexandra did something she hadn't expected from herself. She laughed. It startled her. The sound was small, almost shy, but it felt foreign, like a language she hadn't spoken in years. "I suppose I must be somewhat smart," she said softly. Her hand shifted against the armrest of her wheelchair, unconsciously betraying the truth. "I just finished my degree while dealing with some challenges." Her eyes flicked downward, as if the chair itself explained what she didn't have the strength to put into words. The father noticed. His gaze lingered, not on the chair, not on her frail posture, but on the tremor in her voice. Pain, he recognized it. Not the kind people whispered about behind closed doors, but the kind that lived inside bones, the kind that never truly left. "We were here for my friend's graduation," he said lightly, trying to keep things comfortable. "But my son was more excited than the graduate himself." "It's my first time at a graduation," Tommy announced proudly. "My dad says when I grow up, I can come to school here too. Do you think they'll remember me?" Alexandra's lips curved into a smile before she could stop it. His innocence was disarming, pure in a way that scraped against the raw edges of her own loneliness. "I think anyone who meets you would remember you," she said, and she meant it. For a moment, they simply stood together, three strangers in a pocket of silence, while the rest of the world celebrated around them. Alexandra almost let herself believe it was natural, that she belonged here with them. But reality returned quickly, sharp and cruel. Because the truth was obvious, no one had come for her. No family member searching for her in the crowd. No friend waving for a photo. Just empty space where love should have been. Tommy, oblivious to the weight of silence, tilted his head again. "Are you waiting for someone?" The question struck Alexandra's composure like a hammer against glass. Her lips parted. She could lie, pretend. But the words slipped out cracked and jagged. No, my father is at a conference overseas. He couldn't make it. Her voice broke on the last words. She tried to swallow it down, but the ache in her chest betrayed her. Marcus, she knew his name now from the way Tommy said it. Felt the sting as though it were his own. He knew that kind of ache. He had carried it in hospital rooms, in empty nights when his son cried for a mother who wasn't there to hold him. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw it clearly. This young woman had achieved something extraordinary, with absolutely no one to share it with. He straightened, as if making a decision even he hadn't expected. Well then, he said carefully, would you like us to take a photo of you? Every graduate deserves a picture to remember this day. Alexandra blinked at him, startled. A photo? Why would strangers care enough to? You don't have to. She began, but Tommy jumped in with his usual lack of filters. Dad's really good at pictures! He takes lots of me because Mom can't. The words hung in the air like an uninvited guest. Alexandra's chest tightened. She didn't need details to understand. The absence in Marcus's eyes told her enough. The boy's mother wasn't just away. She was gone. And in that instant, something unspoken passed between her and Marcus. A fragile recognition. Two people bound by losses they rarely dared to share. I would actually like that, Alexandra whispered. Marcus pulled out his battered phone, its screen cracked in one corner, and angled it carefully. He guided her into the light streaming from the tall window. Straighten your cap, he said softly. She did. No smile. Just once. For you, not for anyone else. And for the first time all day, Alexandra gave a real smile. Marcus captured it, the image glowing with more than just pixels. He didn't know it yet, but he had just frozen a moment that would one day matter more than either of them could imagine. Alexandra stared at the photo on his phone. For the first time in years, she didn't look broken. She looked alive. What she didn't know was that this stranger's kindness had just cracked open a door she thought was locked forever. The photo lingered between them, glowing faintly on Marcus's old phone screen. Alexandra stared at her own reflection, hardly recognizing the girl smiling back. For one brief second, she looked alive, not like the invisible shadow who had been sitting by the window moments ago. See, Marcus said softly, his voice almost coaxing. That's a graduate who deserves to be celebrated. Alexandra opened her mouth to reply, but Tommy beat her to it. Dad, can we get ice cream now? Please? I'm starving. Marcus chuckled. We'll grab something at home, buddy. But today's special. Tommy pressed. It's graduation day. We can celebrate too, right? His eyes darted toward Alexandra, widening with that innocent curiosity again. She can come too. Right, Dad? Alexandra froze. Surely he was joking. Surely this was the part where they waved goodbye, disappeared into the noise of the crowd, and she returned to her quiet corner. That was safer, expected. But Marcus's eyes flicked to hers. He looked conflicted, as if weighing something silently. Finally, he said, well, only if she'd like to. The world seemed to tilt. Alexandra's heart skipped painfully. She hadn't been invited anywhere, not genuinely, in years. Her first instinct was to refuse, to retreat into the walls she had built around herself. But then she saw Tommy's hopeful grin, the way his small hands pressed together as if begging her not to vanish into silence. Her voice was shaky. Ice cream sounds nice. Tommy let out a triumphant cheer that earned a few glances from passers-by. Yes! Ice cream with our new friend. Marcus looked faintly embarrassed, but he didn't correct the boy. He simply said, there's a place a few blocks from here. It's nothing fancy. And for the first time all day, Alexandra wheeled forward, not toward the exit alone, but beside someone else. The shop was a cozy little family-owned place tucked between a laundromat and a bookstore. Its mismatched chairs, faded posters, and buzzing neon signs spoke of years of survival in a town that often forgot places like this. The bell above the door jingled as they entered. The smell of waffle cones and chocolate filled the air. Children pressed sticky noses against the freezer glass, pointing at flavors. Alexandra hesitated just inside the doorway, suddenly self-conscious. She could feel eyes flicking toward her chair, the way they always did. But then Tommy tugged at her armrest with childish authority. Come on, you have to try chocolate chip cookie dough. It's the best in the universe. She smiled despite herself. Is that so? Absolutely. His seriousness made her laugh again. A sound she hadn't expected to hear twice in one day. They ordered, Tommy insisting on 2 scoops of cookie dough, Marcus quietly choosing vanilla, and Alexandra, after a long pause, surprising herself with strawberry. They sat at a small corner table. Tommy immediately dug into his melting mountain, wearing half of it on his face within minutes. You really like ice cream, huh? Alexandra asked, amused. Tommy nodded enthusiastically, his mouth full. Dad says it's a treat, but I think life's too short not to eat it all the time. Marcus sighed. And he wonders why I don't buy it often. The exchange was light ordinary, painfully ordinary. But to Alexandra it felt extraordinary. She couldn't remember the last time she had sat at a table, laughing with people who wanted her there. She leaned back, letting the cool sweetness of strawberry melt on her tongue. And then, unexpectedly, words slipped out. I chose business because I wanted to change things. Companies, they forget people like me. Accessibility. Inclusion. I wanted to understand how decisions are made, and maybe one day make them differently. Marcus looked at her with quiet respect. That sounds like something the world needs. Or her lips curved, but her voice faltered. Maybe. Or maybe it's just me trying to prove I'm not as useless as people think. The table fell silent for a moment. The noise of the shop faded, leaving only the weight of her words hanging in the air. Marcus leaned forward. You're not useless. Don't let anyone make you believe that. The conviction in his voice startled her. He wasn't saying it out of pity. He meant it. Tommy licked his spoon, oblivious to the tension. Dad says people are like books. You can't know what's inside by just looking at the cover. Both adults glanced at him surprised. His words struck deeper than he realized. Alexandra's throat tightened. She wanted to believe it. She wanted to believe someone could look past her chair, her scars, her failures, and still see her. But the truth clawed at her chest. She had lived most of her life invisible. She knew how easily kindness could fade. Marcus changed the subject, perhaps sensing her spiraling thoughts. So, strawberry, huh? That your favorite? Alexandra smiled faintly. Forest green is my favorite color. But strawberry, it reminds me that life can still be sweet, even after bitterness. There it was again, that flicker of strength hiding beneath her fragility. Marcus nodded slowly, storing her words away as though they mattered. Because to him, they did. As they talked, Alexandra found herself revealing more than she intended. The loneliness of her apartment, the difficulty of navigating campus, the way people spoke to her as though her chair defined her. Marcus listened without judgment. He told her about his factory job, about bedtime stories with Tommy, about Clara, though only in pieces. They were two broken lives, unraveling secrets over scoops of ice cream. For Alexandra, the shop's chatter blurred until it felt like they were the only three people in the world. When Tommy asked, "Do you have any family nearby?" she hesitated. Her fork hovered over the last bite of strawberry ice cream. My mother died when I was born, she said slowly. And my father, well, he's alive, but sometimes it feels like he isn't. Her voice cracked. Her hand trembled against the table. Marcus's jaw tightened. He wanted to ask, to press to understand. But he forced himself to wait, because sometimes silence told a story all its own. Alexandra looked down, her eyes glistening. The truth is, my father's not just gone. He's ashamed of me. She didn't know it yet, but this single confession would ignite a chain of choices that neither she nor Marcus could ever undo. The words had slipped out before Alexandra could catch them. My father's ashamed of me? The hum of the ice cream shop seemed to fade, replaced by the pounding in her ears. She had never said it out loud, not to friends, not to professors, not to anyone. Saying it now felt like peeling away a mask she had worn so long it had become her skin. Tommy blinked at her, confused by the heaviness of her tone. But Marcus leaned in, his gaze steady, urging her to continue. Not demanding, not pressing, just waiting like a man who knew what silence could carry. Her fingers traced the rim of her empty bowl. She swallowed hard. The accident had happened during my sophomore year. A ski trip with my sorority sisters. I wasn't even supposed to go. I hated skiing, but I didn't want to be left behind. Her voice dropped raw. One wrong turn. Too much speed. A tree waiting at the bottom of the hill. The memory came rushing back in vivid flashes. The cold sting of snow against her cheeks. The screaming pain. The panic of not being able to move. The sky had been so blue that day. She remembered staring up at it, realizing her body no longer obeyed her, and thinking, so this is what it feels like when your life shatters in an instant. The doctors said my spine was broken. Irreversible. No miracle surgeries. No amount of money would fix it. Marcus's fists tightened on the table, knuckles white. He didn't interrupt. She took a shuddering breath. My father flew in from Hong Kong. He stayed 36 hours. 36 hours to make sure the hospital had the best equipment. 36 hours to hire the most expensive therapists. And then, her lips trembled. Then he left. Tommy's spoon clattered against his bowl. He just left you. Alexandra's laugh was sharp, bitter. Nathan Sinclair doesn't do weakness. He's the kind of man who wins every deal, who never accepts failure. And me? She gestured to her chair. I was a failure he couldn't control. A problem he couldn't solve. Her voice cracked on the last word. Marcus's chest burned with anger he struggled to contain. He knew the sting of abandonment. His father had walked out when he was 17, leaving him to shoulder the weight of a family not ready for his shoulders. But hearing it from Alexandra, seeing the pain etched across her face, it was different. How could he? Marcus started, but stopped himself. The fury in his throat wasn't what she needed. What she needed was something else. something no one had ever given her. That must have been incredibly lonely, he said softly. The simple acknowledgement broke something in her. Her green eyes welled until tears spilled freely. She didn't sob, didn't wail. She just sat there, tears streaking silently down her cheeks, her breathing shallow, as though finally letting herself grieve the years of silence. Marcus reached across the table, not touching her, just letting his hand rest in the open space between them. An invitation, a bridge. For a moment Alexandra stared at it. Her heart raced. No one touched her anymore, not without hesitation, not without pity. Tentatively, she let her trembling fingers brush his. And for the first time since the accident, she felt human again. Tommy leaned closer, his young face full of confusion and fierce loyalty. If I was your dad, I'd never leave you. Not ever. The innocence of his words pierced Alexandra's heart more than anything else. She smiled through tears, whispering, "You're a good boy, Tommy." Marcus swallowed hard, his throat tight. He hadn't realized how much weight he was carrying until that moment. The weight of raising a son alone, the weight of grief for Clara, the fear of never being enough. And yet, sitting here with Alexandra, he felt something shifting. She wasn't just another broken soul. She was a mirror. Showing him that brokenness didn't mean the end of life. Sometimes, it was the beginning of something else. But even as warmth settled between them, Alexandra's voice cut through with a truth that chilled Marcus to the bone. "You know the worst part," she whispered, her fingers tightened on his hand. "Sometimes I think he was right. Sometimes I think I am a mistake." The word stabbed the air like a knife. Marcus's heart slammed against his ribs. He leaned closer, his voice fierce. "Don't you ever believe that? Do you hear me? You are not a mistake. You're—" But his words caught in his throat. Because even as he said them, a memory of his own failures clawed its way to the surface. The nights he'd gone hungry so Tommy could eat. The times he'd tucked his son into bed and wondered if Clara would have done it better. The years of thinking maybe I'm not enough either. For the first time, Marcus realized just how deeply their wounds intertwined. And somewhere deep inside, a new fear began to take root. What if we're both too broken to fix each other? Alexandra's tears slowed, but her eyes darkened as she whispered something Marcus didn't expect. "You don't understand. My father isn't just ashamed of me. He warned me that anyone who gets close will regret it." And in that moment, Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Because for the first time, he wondered if stepping into Alexandra's life would cost him more than he was ready to lose. The night after the ice cream shop, Marcus found himself staring at the cracked ceiling of his small apartment long after Tommy had drifted off to sleep. He should have been resting. The morning shift at the plant came early, but his mind kept circling back to Alexandra. Her voice haunted him. "Sometimes I think I am a mistake." Those words had burrowed deep, scratching at memories he usually kept locked away. He thought about Clara, the way she had smiled at him the night they planned their future, the way she never got to hold their son. He thought about the moment the doctor had said the words "no young father should ever hear complications, nothing we could do." He rolled onto his side, staring at Tommy's small form curled beneath his blanket. For years Marcus had carried the crushing belief that he had failed them both, Clara and their boy. And now, sitting across from Alexandra at a sticky ice cream table, he had seen the same weight pressing down on her. Two people broken in different ways, but broken all the same. That night, against his usual instincts, Marcus picked up his phone. He typed a message, hesitated, erased it, typed again. Finally, with a deep breath, he pressed send. "Couldn't sleep. You okay?" The reply came quickly, too quickly for someone who was fine. "Not really. But thank you for asking." And just like that, their conversations began. Days turned into weeks. Their exchanges grew longer, stretching into the quiet hours after Tommy's bedtime, when Marcus sat at the kitchen table with the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Alexandra told him about her apartment near campus. Too big, too empty. About the way people looked at her chair before they looked at her face. About the rejection letters piling up from companies who praised her resume, but couldn't see past her disability. Marcus, in turn, told her about the factory. About greasy machines, aching hands, and bosses who treated men like replaceable parts. He told her about the exhaustion of double shifts, about the nights he ate canned soup so Tommy could have meat on his plate. But most of all, he told her about Clara. The words came slowly, reluctantly at first. "Me met at the factory. Third shift. We used to dream together. Save money, get me a GED, maybe trade school. She wanted to be a nurse. We thought we had time." He stopped, staring at the screen, wondering if he had said too much. But Alexandra's reply came like a lifeline. "What happened to her wasn't your fault, Marcus." His throat tightened as he read it. No one had ever said it so directly. Family had offered empty platitudes. Friends had drifted away. But Alexandra's words, they felt like the first stone being lifted off his chest. One evening, after a particularly rough day at the plant, Marcus called her instead of texting. The sound of her voice steadied him in a way he hadn't expected. "You sound tired," she said softly. "I am," he admitted. "Some days I feel like I'm drowning. Like no matter how hard I work, it's never enough for Tommy." Silence stretched across the line, not uncomfortable but heavy with meaning. Then Alexandra spoke. "You're raising an incredible boy. Do you know how rare that is? His empathy, his joy. That's you, Marcus. That doesn't happen by accident." He swallowed hard, blinking against the sting in his eyes. Her belief in him was like oxygen to lungs that had been starved too long. And for Alexandra, Marcus's presence was equally life-saving. When job interviews ended with polite rejection smiles, she called him. He reminded her of her worth. When she confessed how invisible she felt walking through crowded streets, Marcus said, "Anyone who can't see you is blind to something extraordinary." Their lives began to intertwine in small, unexpected ways. Tommy drew her pictures of superheroes and insisted Marcus send them to her. Alexandra texted back photos of the books she was reading or the silly coffee mugs she collected. One night, Marcus's old car broke down completely. Frustrated, he called Alexandra just to vent. Instead of sympathy, she stayed up until dawn researching used cars, building him a spreadsheet of options. When he asked her why she'd spent hours doing it, her answer was simple. "Because you needed help. Isn't that what friends do?" Marcus sat at the table, staring at her message until his vision blurred. It had been so long since anyone had shared his burdens. For the first time in years, he realized he wasn't carrying the weight of the world alone. But as their bond deepened, a question began to gnaw at him. Late at night, when Tommy was asleep and Alexandra's voice lingered in his ears, Marcus would catch himself wondering, what if this is more than friendship? The thought terrified him. He was a high school dropout, a factory worker, a man who barely scraped by. And she was brilliant, educated from a world of money and power. Even if her father had cast her aside, she was still Alexandra Sinclair, a name people knew. And him, he was nobody. Yet every night, when she laughed at Tommy's stories or when her voice softened at his confessions, Marcus felt something dangerous stirring. Something he had buried with Clara. Hope. One night, after hours of conversation, Alexandra's voice grew quiet. "Marcus, can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" His heart pounded as he whispered, "Of course." There was a pause, then a trembling confession. "The accident didn't just take my legs. It took my dreams. And lately, I'm starting to wonder if letting you in means I'm dreaming again. And that scares me more than anything." Marcus froze, breath caught in his throat. Because what she didn't realize was that she wasn't the only one afraid of what was happening between them. The Saturday morning sun poured across Riverside Park, painting the grass in warm shades of green and gold. Children's laughter floated through the air, mingling with the distant thud of kickballs and the squeak of swings. The annual father-son picnic was in full swing. Marcus carried a foldable blanket under one arm and a cooler under the other, trying to balance everything while keeping an eye on Tommy, who darted ahead like an untamed spark of energy. "Dad, hurry," Tommy shouted, waving frantically. "Alexandra's coming." Marcus felt a strange tightness in his chest at the sound of her name. He'd been both nervous and excited when she agreed to come. It wasn't just that she was stepping into his son's world, it was that she was stepping into his. And then he saw her. Wheeling herself along the sidewalk, sunlight catching her blonde hair, Alexandra looked more at ease than he had ever seen her. She wore a soft green blouse, the color of deep forest moss, and a quiet smile that seemed almost hopeful. Tommy ran to her instantly. "You came?" "Of course I came," she said, her voice warm as she ruffled his hair. "I wouldn't miss it." Marcus hurried to meet them, slightly out of breath. "You made it. I'm glad." Her smile widened, but he caught the flicker of nerves in her eyes. She was trying hard, to belong. The park buzzed with activity. Fathers grilled hot dogs, children raced each other in sack races, teachers mingled with parents. Yet as Marcus spread the blanket beneath a shady tree, Alexandra drew the attention of more than a few curious stares. Children whispered, pointing at her chair. Some fathers glanced briefly before looking away uncomfortable. Marcus braced himself, worried Alexandra would retreat into her shell. But she surprised him. When a little girl approached timidly and asked, "Does it hurt to be in a wheelchair?" Alexandra leaned down and smiled gently. "Sometimes. But you know what? Everyone's body has challenges. Some people need glasses. Some people need hearing aids. I use this chair to move around. It's just another way of living." The little girl's eyes widened. "Can I try sitting in it?" Alexandra laughed softly. "Sure, but only if your parents say yes." And soon, a line of children formed, taking turns sitting in her chair, jiggling as they wheeled in clumsy circles. Alexandra guided each one patiently, her voice calm, her humor quick. Marcus watched from the blanket, his chest tight with unexpected emotion. She wasn't just surviving, she was shining. For the first time since he'd met her, she seemed unafraid of being seen. Tommy, proud beyond measure, introduced her to everyone. "This is my friend Alexandra." She's really smart. She graduated from the big school. Teachers smiled politely, classmates asked questions, and slowly, the atmosphere shifted. Alexandra wasn't the girl in the wheelchair anymore. She was just Alexandra. Marcus couldn't take his eyes off her. Later, as they sat on the blanket, sharing sandwiches and juice boxes, Marcus leaned back on his elbows, watching Tommy chase a frisbee with other children. The sunlight flickered through the trees, casting shifting patterns across Alexandra's face. "You're good with kids," he said quietly. She glanced at him, a small blush rising in her cheeks. "I never really had the chance, but it feels natural somehow." Marcus hesitated before speaking again. "You'd make an incredible mother someday." The words slipped out before he could stop them. His face flushed instantly, but Alexandra didn't look offended. She stared at him for a long moment, her eyes shimmering with something unreadable. Then she whispered, "Do you really think so?" He held her gaze. "I know so." The air between them thickened. For a moment, the sounds of the park faded, and all Marcus could hear was the pounding of his own heart. But before he could say anything more, a shadow fell across them. A sleek black car had pulled up along the edge of the park, its polished exterior gleaming under the sun. The kind of car that didn't belong in a community picnic full of rusty trucks and used sedans. A man stepped out, tall, immaculately dressed in a dark tailored suit, his hair slicked back, his expression sharp as glass. Marcus didn't know him, but he didn't need to. The way Alexandra's entire body went rigid told him enough. Her hands clenched her wheels, knuckles white. The color drained from her face. The man's eyes found her instantly. "Cold, calculating, Alexandra," he said, his voice clipped, emotionless. "We need to talk." The warmth of the day evaporated in an instant. The laughter of children seemed distant now, muffled as though the park itself held its breath. Marcus rose slowly, positioning himself half in front of her. "And you are?" The man's gaze barely flicked to him before dismissing him entirely. "This doesn't concern you." But Alexandra's lips trembled. Her voice came out broken, barely above a whisper. "Dad." Marcus froze. The word hit him like a punch to the chest. Dad. This wasn't just any man. This was Nathan Sinclair, the father who had abandoned her. Nathan's eyes narrowed. "Come with me now." Alexandra shook her head weakly, her chair trembling under her grip. Marcus's instincts screamed to step in, to shield her. But Alexandra's whispered words stopped him. "It's fine," she said, though her tone betrayed anything but calm. Nathan's eyes swept over Marcus and Tommy with disdain. "You're wasting your potential sitting here, pretending this is your life." His lip curled. Pathetic. Alexandra flinched as though struck. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. He wanted to say something, to fight back against the venom in that voice. But Alexandra looked at him with wide, pleading eyes. "Don't. Not here." "Not now?" Nathan turned sharply, his expensive shoes clicking against the pavement as he walked back to his car. He didn't look back. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. The breeze stirred the edges of the blanket, but none of them moved. Finally, Marcus crouched beside Alexandra, his voice low and steady. "You don't need his approval to know your worth." Her eyes met his wet with tears she refused to let fall. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe maybe he was right. But deep inside, Alexandra knew Nathan Sinclair never appeared without a reason. His return wasn't coincidence, and the next time he came, he wouldn't leave so quietly. The moment Nathan Sinclair walked back to his sleek black car, the air seemed to thaw, but only slightly. The laughter of children returned, the breeze picked up again, but for Alexandra, the world still felt frozen. Her hands trembled against the wheels of her chair, her pulse hammering in her ears. Marcus crouched beside her, his jaw tight, eyes burning with anger he was holding back. Tommy hovered close, confusion etched across his young face. "Alexandra," Marcus began softly, but she shook her head, her voice trembling. "That was my father." The words hung heavy between them. Marcus had guessed it the moment she said Dad back at the park, but hearing her admit it made the air feel heavier. He remembered the bitterness in Nathan's eyes, the way he dismissed both of them without a second thought. A man like that wasn't just cold. He was dangerous in ways that didn't need fists to wound. Alexandra faltered, searching for words. "He's complicated, no." Marcus said firmly. "He's cruel." Her breath hitched, her green eyes flicking toward him with a mixture of gratitude and fear. "You don't understand. He's Nathan Sinclair. Everything he touches bends to his will. He doesn't lose, Marcus. Not in business, not in life. And right now he sees me as his failure." The admission cut deep. Marcus clenched his fists. "Then he's blind. Because I see someone strong, someone fighting every day." Her lips trembled as though she wanted to believe him, but the shadow her father had left lingered too heavily. That night, Alexandra couldn't sleep. She replayed Nathan's words over and over. "You're wasting your potential. Pretending this is your life." His voice still had power over her. Power to shrink her down, to make her doubt everything she had built since the accident. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Thinking of you. Don't let his voice be louder than yours. Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but Marcus didn't know the full truth. Nathan wasn't just ashamed of her. He had plans for her, plans that didn't include weakness or love, or anything resembling a normal life. The next day, Marcus was tightening bolts on a grinding machine at the plant when his phone buzzed again. He almost ignored it until he saw the name. Alexandra. He answered quickly, but her voice wasn't steady this time. It was small, brittle. He came to see me. Marcus's gut clenched. What happened? Hey, he wants me to move back into the Sinclair estate. He says being here with people like you? She hesitated, her breath shaky. Is dragging me down. He offered me a position at his firm. A position I didn't apply for. Said it's time I stop, embarrassing him. Marcus gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. And what did you say? I told him no. But Marcus? Her voice cracked. You don't tell Nathan Sinclair no without consequences. Marcus closed his eyes, forcing himself to stay calm. He'd faced men with power before, bosses who thought paychecks bought obedience, foremen who thought shouting replaced respect. But Nathan Sinclair was another breed. He had money, influence, a reputation built on never losing. And Marcus was just Marcus, a factory worker, a single dad. But as he thought about Alexandra's trembling voice and the way Tommy had beamed at her during the picnic, something solidified in his chest. He might not have wealth or power, but he had something Nathan Sinclair couldn't buy. Loyalty, heart, the will to protect the people who mattered. That weekend, Alexandra invited Marcus and Tommy to her apartment. It was the first time Marcus had seen where she lived. The place was elegant but cold. High ceilings, pristine furniture, spotless floors. It didn't feel like home. As Tommy sprawled on the rug with his toys, Alexandra sat across from Marcus, her eyes tired. He told me once, she said quietly, that weakness in business is like blood in the water. Sharks circle. They destroy you. I've spent my whole life trying not to bleed in front of him. But the truth is, Marcus? She looked down at her hands. He doesn't just see me as weak. He sees anyone I care about as weakness too. Marcus frowned. What do you mean? Her voice dropped to a whisper. If he thinks you and Tommy are a distraction, he'll find a way to push you out of my life. He always wins. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low but firm. Not this time. She looked at him, eyes glistening. You don't understand who he is. No, Marcus said, his jaw tightening. Maybe you don't understand who I am. I've lived my whole life fighting for the people I love. And I'm not about to stop now. For the first time in weeks, Alexandra smiled. It was small, fragile, but real. You always know what to say. Marcus didn't answer, because deep down, he knew words wouldn't be enough when it came to Nathan Sinclair. And sure enough, as the night settled around them, Alexandra's phone buzzed with a new message. She read it once, twice, her hands trembling, her face drained of color. What is it? Marcus asked, his stomach sinking. She turned the screen toward him. It was a single text from her father. Enjoy your little fairy tale while it lasts. I'll end it soon. Marcus felt a chill crawl down his spine. Nathan Sinclair wasn't just disapproving. He was declaring war, and Marcus knew, with terrifying clarity, that this man had the power to keep his promise. The phone call came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, but the sound of Alexandra's voice was anything but ordinary. Marcus was at the plant, sweat dripping down his neck as he tightened bolts on a machine. When his phone buzzed, he wiped his hands on his jeans and answered, expecting her usual calm tone. Instead, her words burst through, trembling with excitement. Marcus, I got it. He froze. Got what? The job, she breathed. The one I've been waiting for. A major consulting firm offered me a leadership role in their diversity and accessibility program. It's exactly what I've been dreaming about. Real power to change things. A budget. A team. Everything. Marcus's lips curved into a smile despite the grease on his hands. Alexandra, that's incredible. You earned this. For a brief moment, joy spilled across the line. He could hear it in her voice, like sunlight breaking through weeks of clouds. But then, just as quickly, the brightness dimmed. There's just one thing, she whispered. Marcus felt his chest tighten. What? The job's in Colorado. The words dropped like stones. The noise of the factory around him seemed to fade. Colorado, hundreds of miles away. He forced his voice steady. That's a great opportunity. You have to take it. But Alexandra's silence told him she wasn't convinced. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. Do I? Marcus, these past months with you and Tommy, they've been the happiest of my life. I don't know if any job is worth losing that. Marcus's heart clenched. He turned away from the factory floor, finding a quiet corner. His chest ached with conflicting truths. He wanted her to stay. God, he wanted it more than anything. But how could he let her give up her dreams for him? You can't turn this down because of us, he said finally, though every word tasted like ash. You've worked too hard. What if my dreams have changed? She whispered. The question hung between them, heavy, dangerous. Marcus swallowed hard. What are you saying? There was silence, broken only by the faint hum of the line. Then Alexandra's voice, soft but certain. I'm saying I love you, Marcus. Both of you. And I don't know if I can walk away from that. His breath caught. His knees nearly gave out. For weeks, months even, he had buried the truth, too afraid to admit it. But now, hearing her say it first, the dam inside him broke. I love you too, he whispered, his throat tight. More than I ever thought I could love anyone again. That night, they spoke for hours. Alexandra confessed her fears, that she would lose herself in the corporate world, that her father's shadow would always stretch over her choices. Marcus confessed his insecurities, that he was just a factory worker, a dropout, a man who had nothing but love to give. You think that's nothing? Alexandra said fiercely. Marcus, that's everything. I've had money my whole life. I've never had what you and Tommy give me. Her words warmed him, but his doubts lingered. And what if your father's right? What if I'm not good enough for you? Don't you dare, she said sharply. Don't you dare let his voice decide who you are. You're the strongest, most decent man I've ever known. That's why her voice softened. That's why I choose you. For a while, they allowed themselves to imagine it, a life together. Alexandra in their tiny kitchen, helping Tommy with homework, Marcus coming home to more than silence. The three of them a family, not perfect but whole. But reality clawed its way back. Because even as they dreamed, Marcus knew Nathan Sinclair would not let this go. The following week, Alexandra flew to Colorado for final negotiations. She called Marcus from her hotel room, her voice tired but hopeful. They want me to relocate. They're firm on it, but I pushed back. I asked if I could work remotely, travel quarterly. They weren't thrilled, but they're considering it. That's good, Marcus said, though worry gnawed at him. And if they don't agree? She was quiet for a long moment. Then I'll have to choose. And Marcus, her voice broke, I don't know if I'm strong enough to make the wrong choice. He wanted to tell her there was no wrong choice. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. Because either way, she would lose something. Back home, Tommy had no such hesitation. She loves us, Dad, he said matter-of-factly while drawing stick figures of the three of them. That's more important than a job. Marcus smiled sadly. Sometimes it's not that simple, buddy. But Tommy only shrugged. I think it is. When Alexandra returned, she went straight to Marcus's apartment. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. They gave me the offer, she said. Colorado. Full relocation. Marcus's stomach sank. And what did you say? She looked at him, tears brimming in her eyes. I told them I needed time. Because Marcus, I can't lose you. I can't lose Tommy. He reached for her hand, his voice low. And I can't let you give up everything you've worked for. Her tears spilled over. Then what do we do? He pulled her close, his heart breaking at the impossible choice before them. We hold on, and we fight, together. Later that night, Alexandra checked her phone. A new message waited. It wasn't from the firm. It was from her father. Colorado accepts you. But remember this. Love is weakness. If you choose them, I will destroy him. Alexandra's blood ran cold. For the first time, she realized Nathan Sinclair wasn't just trying to control her life. He was threatening Marcus's. The silence in Alexandra's apartment was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock on the wall. On the table between her and Marcus lay two things: a glossy folder with the Colorado consulting firm's offer letter, and her phone, its screen still glowing with her father's chilling message. If you choose them, I will destroy him. She hadn't shown it to Marcus yet. She couldn't. Not when he already carried so much. Marcus sat with his elbows on the table, staring at the contract as if it were an enemy he couldn't fight. His rough hands, scarred from years of factory work, drummed against the surface. He looked exhausted, and Alexandra knew why. She was asking him to accept the impossible, that she might have to leave, or that she might have to risk everything to stay. Tommy's voice broke the tension. He was sprawled on the rug with his crayons, carefully coloring in a drawing of three stick figures holding hands. Dad, do you think Alexandra will live with us someday? The innocence in his tone pierced Alexandra's heart. She blinked back tears, whispering, if you'll have me, Tommy. The boy grinned and went back to coloring, satisfied. But Marcus wasn't smiling. He rubbed a hand across his jaw, the weight of reality pressing down on him. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. You can't throw this away, Alexandra. This job, it's everything you've worked for. The kind of opportunity people dream about. Her throat tightened. And what if my dream has changed? He looked up, his brown eyes shadowed. Then you have to be sure. Because if you walk away from this for me, and later regret it, I couldn't live with that. Her chest ached. She wanted to tell him about the message, about her father's threats. But some part of her knew Marcus would charge headfirst into a battle he couldn't win. Nathan Sinclair had wealth, power, and influence. Marcus had heart, but heart alone couldn't stand against a man like that. Still, when she looked at Marcus across the table, she saw the truth she couldn't deny. This wasn't just about her career. It was about survival. And survival, she realized, wasn't measured in titles or salaries. It was measured in love. The next day, Alexandra sat in the boardroom of the consulting firm. The executives beamed at her, praising her thesis, her vision, her inspiring perseverance. They slid the contract across the table again, waiting for her signature. Her pen hovered over the line. For a moment she saw her father's face, sharp, demanding, telling her she would be nothing without his approval. She saw years of invisibility, of trying to earn love that would never come. Then, she saw something else. Tommy's wide grin, ice cream smeared across his face. Marcus's steady hands, rough but gentle, holding hers in that dingy little shop. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. I can't relocate. If you want me, it has to be remote. The room went silent. The lead executive frowned. That's not our standard practice. Then you don't want me? Alexandra said firmly, surprising even herself, because I will not leave the life I've started building. The executives exchanged glances. After a tense pause, one of them sighed. We'll consider a hybrid arrangement. Quarterly travel. Final answer by tomorrow. Alexandra nodded, her heart pounding. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was a line drawn. That night she returned to Marcus's apartment. He was stirring a pot of spaghetti on the stove, his shoulders tense. Well? He asked without turning. They want me in Colorado, she admitted. Then, softer, but I told them no. I told them I'd only accept if I could stay here. With you. The spoon clattered against the pot as Marcus froze. Slowly, he turned to face her. His eyes searched hers, wary. Are you sure? This isn't something you can take back? I'm sure, she whispered. I'm choosing us. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Marcus crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. The embrace was fierce, desperate, like 2 people clinging to the edge of a cliff together. I love you, he murmured into her hair. But I'm scared. I'm scared of what your father will do. Her body stiffened. She almost confessed about the message. Almost. But she couldn't, not yet. Instead, she whispered back, then we'll face him together. Later that evening, Tommy bounded into the room, his drawing clutched in his hand. Look, I finished it. He held up the picture, 3 stick figures, smiling, standing beneath a crooked roof labeled, home. Marcus swallowed hard, emotion clogging his throat. Alexandra's eyes blurred with tears. It was simple, childish, messy, and yet it was everything she had ever wanted. A family. But as they tucked Tommy into bed that night, Alexandra's phone buzzed again. Her blood ran cold when she saw the name. Nathan Sinclair. The message was short. You've made your choice. Now you'll see the cost. As she turned off the phone quickly, slipping it face down on the counter before Marcus could see. Her hands shook. Her heart pounded. She had chosen her family? But Nathan Sinclair wasn't going to let her walk away so easily. Alexandra lay awake long into the night, Marcus sleeping beside her, Tommy breathing softly in the next room. Her father's threat echoed in her mind, and she realized with icy certainty choosing a family meant declaring war against the man who had given her life, and he had just vowed to take everything from her. The morning air was heavy, a storm threatening to break over the city. Alexandra stood at her apartment window, staring down at the sleek black car parked across the street. It had been there all night, engine off, windows tinted. She didn't need to guess who had sent it. Her father was done with threats. Now he was watching. Marcus paced behind her, restless, his jaw clenched. This isn't living, he muttered. We can't have him breathing down our necks like this. Tommy deserves better. You deserve better. You. Alexandra turned from the window, her voice steadied despite the fear twisting inside her. Running won't stop him. We have to face him. Marcus stopped pacing, his eyes searching hers. Are you sure? She nodded slowly. For once in my life, I need to stand on my own 2 feet. Even if they don't work the way they used to. The decision was made. They met Nathan Sinclair and his empire. The towering glass building that bore the Sinclair name across its steel facade. Inside, the air smelled of leather and power. His office sat at the very top, lined with bookshelves he'd never read and paintings chosen more for price than meaning. Nathan stood behind his desk, tall, immaculate, his presence filling the room like a storm cloud. His eyes flicked over Marcus with disdain before settling on his daughter. So, he said coldly, you've chosen poverty over greatness, a mechanic's rags over the Sinclair legacy. Alexandra's hands trembled, but she wheeled forward, her chin lifting with quiet defiance. I didn't choose poverty. I chose love. I chose family. Something you'll never understand. A dangerous smile tugged at Nathan's lips. Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't rebuild reputations. And this man, he gestured toward Marcus with a sneer, is nothing. When he collapses under the weight of his small life, you'll come crawling back? Marcus's fists clenched, but Alexandra reached for his hand, stilling him. Her eyes locked on her father's. "I used to believe your approval was the only measure of my worth," she said, her voice steadying with each word. "But the truth is, you never saw me at all. I'm not broken. I'm not weak. And I don't need your name or your empire to define who I am." Her words echoed through the glass and steel. For a moment, even Nathan seemed caught off guard. But then his expression hardened. "You'll regret this." Marcus stepped forward, his voice low but powerful. "No. The only regret will be yours when you realize you pushed away the best thing you ever had." The confrontation ended with no handshake, no reconciliation. Only Nathan turning his back to them, his silence more final than words. But as they walked out of that office, sunlight broke through the storm clouds outside, spilling golden light across the marble lobby. Alexandra felt lighter than she had in years. For the first time, she had stood up to him. And she had not broken. Weeks passed, the firm in Colorado relented, offering Alexandra a hybrid position. She could stay, work remotely, and still lead the program she had dreamed of. Life began to settle into something fragile but beautiful. Marcus continued his shifts at the factory, but he came home each night to more than silence. Tommy's laughter filled the apartment, Alexandra's presence warming every corner. One evening they returned to Riverside Park, the same place where Nathan had first reappeared, the same place where Alexandra had felt so small. This time it was different. Tommy ran ahead, his kite soaring in the breeze. Marcus spread out a blanket beneath the tree, watching his son with a rare smile. Alexandra wheeled beside him, her hair catching the sunlight. "Do you ever think about what's next?" she asked softly. Marcus turned to her. "Every day, but for once I'm not afraid of it, because whatever comes we'll face it together." She smiled, her eyes glistening. "Full circle," she whispered. "I thought losing my legs meant losing my future. But maybe it was the only way I was meant to find it." As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of fire and gold, Tommy ran back to them, breathless and grinning. "Did you see? My kite went higher than all the others." Marcus pulled him close, ruffling his hair. Alexandra reached out, holding the boy's hand. In that moment, simple, ordinary, perfect, Alexandra realized something profound. Her father had always preached that power was measured in wealth, in fear, in control. But here, sitting on a blanket with a factory worker and his son, she understood the truth. Real power was love. Real wealth was family, and no empire could ever take that away. As they packed up to leave, Alexandra's phone buzzed. For a moment, dread filled her. She expected another message from Nathan, but it wasn't him. It was from the consulting firm. Just 3 words, "Welcome aboard, Director." Tears filled her eyes as she showed Marcus. She had not only chosen her family, she had kept her dreams too. For the first time in years, Alexandra felt whole. And as the 3 of them walked, one man, one child, one woman in a wheelchair, into the fading light of day, she knew they weren't broken pieces anymore. They were something stronger. They were a family. Full circle.
A grieving billionaire, haunted by the loss of his wife, never knew he had a daughter until a poor boy revealed the shocking truth. Hidden away by betrayal, the girl had been living in silence, waiting for the father who never came. When secrets unravel and tears fall, a reunion changes everything. But the twist will break your heart.